The snow fell heavier that day. It wasn't just the usual northern chill. It was the kind that buried old wars and crowned new kings. Ramsay Bolton was dead, and his dogs had finally turned on him, ripping his flesh as he screamed. Jon Snow stood there watching in silence. Blood splattered across his armor, his breath thick in the air. But this wasn't a moment of peace. Not really. Something in him had changed. Winterfell was theirs again. The Stark banners flew high, but the cost was deep. Rickon lay buried beside their father. Sansa, strong and cold-eyed, walked the halls like a shadow of the girl she once was. Jon could feel the weight of leadership pressing down on him, not just in the north, but something more, something bigger. They held a feast that night to honor the fallen. The halls echoed with laughter, but Jon sat in silence, staring into the fire. Davos sat beside him, sipping quietly from a wooden cup. "You've got the look of a man who knows his war isn't over," Davos said without turning his head. Jon didn't answer at first. Then he spoke low. "The Boltons were never the end of it. There's still a mad queen in the south. Still people starving while nobles feast. The realm's broken. I can't just sit here." Davos raised an eyebrow. "What are you saying, lad?" Jon looked up at him. "I'm saying maybe it's time someone ruled not because of birth or name, but because it's right. Maybe it's time a Stark sat the Iron Throne." Davos leaned back, studying him. "You sure you're a Stark?" Jon almost smiled. "I'm sure I'm not a Targaryen." That night, he walked to the Godswood. The red leaves fluttered like whispers around the weirwood tree. Sansa was already there, arms crossed, her face unreadable. "You're thinking about going south," she said. He didn't deny it. "They need a king who understands the people, not Cersei. Not another mad ruler playing games of thrones." Sansa studied him. "And what about me? You'd leave me here?" "You're stronger than me," Jon said. "Winterfell is in good hands. But the realm, it's dying," she sighed. "You're starting a war," Jon nodded slowly. "Maybe, but it'll be the last one." By dawn, ravens flew from Winterfell. Jon Snow declared himself protector of the realm, uniting the north under his banner. He would march south, not for conquest, but for justice. But the world didn't see it that way. In King's Landing, Queen Cersei read the raven with a cold smile. "The bastard wants to be king," she sneered, tossing the letter into the fire. And in Dragonstone, Daenerys Targaryen read her own copy. "Another pretender," she whispered, flames flickering in her eyes. "Let him come." Jon didn't know it yet, but the realm was about to burn again. Only this time, the fire might cleanse what had been broken. And in the north, as the army prepared to march, a lone direwolf howled at the rising sun. The wolf had set his sights on the throne. The cold winds of the north followed Jon Snow as he rode south with his army. The banners of House Stark flapped alongside those of House Mormont, House Hornwood, and others loyal to the wolf. Ser Davos rode beside him, always quiet but alert, his gaze sharp as ever. Behind them, thousands marched, northerners, wildlings, freedmen, and knights, each with their own reasons, but bound by one man's cause. Jon had never wanted power. He never craved titles or crowns, but he had seen what happened when the wrong people wore them, when mad kings and queens ruled with fire and fear. The people had no voice. The realm bled. And maybe, just maybe, he could change that. As they reached Muirt Cailin, messages came faster. Cersei had declared him a traitor and enemy of the crown. She promised gold and titles to any lord who turned on him. But the northern lords stayed firm. The south, however, was more complicated. In Riverrun, House Tully hesitated. Edmure was alive but a broken man. He didn't trust the Lannisters, but he feared another war. "We've buried enough dead to last 10 lifetimes, Edmure told Jon when they met under the old weeping willow by the river. "But if you swear there will be no revenge." "I'll open the gates. I want peace," Edmure. "But not on my knees," Jon said. "Help me take King's Landing. Then we'll build something better." And so the Tully banners joined the march, but not everyone was so willing. In the Vale, Lord Robin Arryn was under Littlefinger's influence. Jon requested a meeting, and surprisingly, it was granted. Sansa joined him for the visit. Her presence rattled Pater Baelish more than Jon ever could. "My lady," Baelish said with his sly smile, "you return like winter itself." Sansa didn't smile back. You once said chaos is a ladder. You're about to fall from the last rung. Jon stood before Robin. I don't want your throne. I only want your help. Cersei will not spare the Vale if I fall. But stand with me and we end this cycle. Robin looked confused. He fidgeted in his chair. Then to everyone's shock, he said, Mother said to always help family. You're Sansa's cousin. I say yes. Petyr Baelish opened his mouth to object, but the Knights of the Vale had already begun preparation. The march continued. From village to village, Jon's army grew. Not because of fear, not because of bribes, but because the people believed in him. A king who fought the dead, a king who knelt to no throne. And in Dragonstone, Daenerys watched all of it unfold with growing fury. She had hoped to win hearts first. Now Jon Snow was doing just that. Tyrion tried to reason with her. He's not your enemy. He wants the same things, justice, peace. But Daenerys clenched her jaw. He wants the throne, just like all the rest. Then speak with him, Tyrion urged. Parley before there's blood. She agreed, barely. A raven flew and Jon responded. They met in a ruined village halfway between Storm's End and King's Landing. It was a place burned long ago in Robert's rebellion. Fitting, somehow. Jon arrived with Davos and a few guards. Daenerys came with Tyrion and Grey Worm. They stood across from each other, two rulers not born to rule, both shaped by war. You're bold, Daenerys said. Marching south without dragons, without fear. Jon kept his voice calm. I don't want your war, Daenerys. But I won't kneel, not now, not after everything. You think the people will follow you over me? Her voice was sharp, almost hurt. I think they already are. The silence between them stretched. You're a Targaryen, she said finally. You have a claim stronger than mine. Do you want the throne? He hesitated. I want peace. But peace can't come from another mad ruler burning cities to ash. Daenerys flinched, wounded by the implication. Then we're enemies. Jon's eyes met hers. I hope not. But as they rode away, neither believed it. Two armies now stood between the throne and ruin, one led by a queen with dragons, the other by a man once called a bastard, and in the shadows of King's Landing, Cersei watched them both. All wolves and fire, she murmured to Qyburn. Let them kill each other. But Jon Snow had no intention of dying. He was not marching for glory. He was marching to end the game. The march to King's Landing was slower now. Supplies were thin, and the roads had turned to mud from the early autumn rains. But Jon Snow didn't slow down. The people of the Riverlands greeted him like a savior. Some whispered his name like he was already king. Others handed him food and supplies, even when they had little to give. He never asked for it. That was the difference. Still, the pressure grew. Every day brought fresh news of Cersei fortifying the capital. The Lannister army was gathering behind the city walls. Euron Greyjoy had brought his fleet back to Blackwater Bay, blockading the harbor. And now, whispers told of wildfire caches hidden beneath the city, left behind from the Mad King's time. Untouched, waiting for a spark. She'll burn the city to keep the throne, Davos muttered, as they set camp a few miles north of the capital. Jon sat at the edge of the firelight, hands clasped. Then we have to take it before she gets the chance. She won't surrender. I know. Sansa rode into camp that evening with Arya beside her. They had come with reinforcements, more northern men, some from the Vale, even a few former Lannister soldiers who deserted. They didn't speak much. They simply joined the camp like they'd always belonged there. Arya went straight to Jon, her face hard as ever. She's got Qyburn building something under the Red Keep. Poison, wildfire, gods know what. I saw the crates myself, Jon stared at her. How'd you see that? Arya smirked. I have my ways. Sansa sat beside Jon, lowering her voice. She's scared. A desperate queen is a dangerous queen. You'll need a plan. Jon looked across the battlefield toward the city walls, barely visible through the smoke of a dozen camps. We wait 2 days. Then we send a final message. What will it say? Arya asked. That we're coming, Jon replied. That night another raven flew to Daenerys. She had returned to Dragonstone after the parley, brooding. Drogon perched atop the castle, massive and silent, his eyes glowing in the moonlight. Missandei sat with her queen, quiet but present. "He will not bend the knee," Daenerys said bitterly. "No," Tyrion agreed, "but he's not your enemy. He might become one." Tyrion hesitated. "What if you rule together?" Daenerys looked at him sharply. "You're both Targaryens. He has the blood of old Valyria. The North loves him. The realm fears you. But together—" She looked away. "He doesn't want me." Tyrion sighed. "That may not matter, but it did." The next morning, Jon's final raven reached King's Landing. To Queen Cersei Lannister, first of her name, "You have ruled through fear and fire. The realm bleeds under your silence. I offer you one last chance to surrender. Step down and face trial for your crimes. Open your gates and no blood will be spilled. Refuse, and the North will take your crown by force." Jon Snow, king in the North, protector of the realm, Cersei read it. Her face stone. "He wants peace," Qyburn said. "He wants power," she snapped. "Like all the rest," Qyburn hesitated. "If I may. There's still time to escape the city." A ship, she grabbed him by the throat, surprising even him. "I was born in this palace. I will die in it if I must." The day of the siege came like a hammer. Jon stood before the gates of King's Landing with thousands at his back. The northern banners flew alongside Tully, Arryn, and even Baratheon flags from Gendry's small contingent. Across the field, Daenerys arrived with Drogon soaring overhead. Her Unsullied marched into formation, flanking Jon's men but not joining them. She rode to Jon's side. "You were right," she said quietly. "She'll never surrender. She's had her chance." The bells of King's Landing stayed silent, and then the gates opened, not for surrender, but for attack. Lannister soldiers stormed out in a surprise charge. The battle had begun. Jon drew Longclaw and shouted for his men. The ground trembled as the two sides clashed steel to steel. Chaos erupted. Arrows flew, bodies fell, and the earth drank deep of blood. Then Drogon came, roaring fire across the outer walls. But this time Daenerys held back. She burned only soldiers, not civilians. Jon fought through the front lines, his sword a blur. At his side, Arya slipped through shadows, striking like a ghost. Sansa remained at the command tent, organizing medics and supplies. By mid-afternoon, they had broken through the first line, but the Red Keep still stood, and somewhere deep beneath it, Cersei waited. Crown still resting on her head, Jon looked up at the tower and knew the real battle was yet to come. The Iron Throne was within reach, but who would be left to sit on it? The sun dipped low over King's Landing, casting long shadows across the broken city. Smoke rose from burning towers, and the smell of ash and blood hung thick in the air. Jon Snow moved through the ruins with grim purpose. His armor was dented, soaked in blood, not all of it his own, and his eyes carried the weight of too many fallen. Behind him, the Stark banners pushed forward, carving a path through the chaos. The Unsullied, though cold and efficient, kept their distance. Daenerys hadn't ordered them to storm the Red Keep yet, not until Jon reached the gates. It was like she was waiting, watching what kind of king he might be in war. Arya appeared at his side, her face smeared with dirt and blood. "She's still in the keep. I saw Qyburn near the tower, moving crates." Jon nodded, wiping blood from his cheek. "Wildfire!" Arya gave a single nod. "She means to burn the whole thing if she loses." Jon didn't hesitate. "Then we don't give her the chance." He turned to Ser Davos and Sansa at the edge of the camp. "Hold the city. No more burning. No more deaths. If Daenerys tries to torch the Red Keep, signal me." Sansa looked at him sharply. "What if you're too late?" Jon's jaw tightened. Then all this was for nothing. He led a small unit of northern men and Vale knights through the rubble, aiming for a secret tunnel once used by Tyrion. Arya guided them through back alleys and underground passages until they reached the base of the Red Keep. "From here, I go alone," she said, slipping into shadow. But she was already gone. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei stood before the Iron Throne, her hand resting lightly on its cold steel. Her golden armor gleamed, untouched by battle. Qyburn stood beside her, face pale, lips tight. "It's not too late," he whispered. "We can still flee." Cersei didn't even look at him. "I won't run from wolves. I won't bow to bastards." Below them, hidden in the catacombs, sat barrels of wildfire, green and glowing, ready to ignite. All it would take was a spark, just one, and Cersei was ready to light the match. Jon reached the throne room just as the great doors creaked open. His boots echoed off the stone. The room, once regal and mighty, now felt cold and hollow. Cersei turned to face him, her eyes like daggers. "You made it." Jon stepped forward slowly, hand near Longclaw. "It's over. The city's lost. Surrender and I'll spare your life." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Spare my life? You think you have that power?" Jon didn't blink. "I don't want to kill you, but I will. For the realm." Cersei walked toward him, dragging her fingers along the cold floor. "I was queen while you were still bleeding on the wall. I've ruled this city longer than you've lived in it, and I'll die before I give it to a northern dog." From the corner, Qyburn stepped back nervously, inching toward the hidden mechanism meant to ignite the wildfire. Jon noticed. He moved fast, too fast for Cersei to stop him. Longclaw flashed through the air. One swing, Qyburn collapsed to the ground. Throat slit, blood pooling around his hands. Cersei screamed, lunging toward the throne, but Jon grabbed her, pinning her against the stone. "This doesn't have to end in fire," he growled. She spat in his face, and that was her answer. Jon's heart thundered in his chest. Killing her meant something. It meant stepping over a line he never wanted to cross. But letting her live, after everything, would mean thousands more might die. He pushed her back, just enough to draw his blade. "I'm sorry." The steel slid clean through. Cersei gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief, mouth trembling as blood filled her throat. She slumped to the floor at the base of the Iron Throne. Not on it, never on it. Jon stared at her body for a long moment, then fell to one knee, not in grief, but in exhaustion. The doors creaked again. Daenerys entered slowly, Drogon's roar echoing outside. She looked from Jon to the throne, then to Cersei's corpse. "You did it," she said softly. Jon stood, eyes locked on hers. It had to be done. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other, the silence between them thicker than any wall. Then Daenerys stepped toward the throne. Her fingers grazed the cold iron, but before she could sit, Arya appeared from the shadows. "She tried to burn the city," she said. "Wildfire barrels everywhere." He stopped her. Jon looked at Daenerys. She didn't deny it. "You were waiting to burn it all," he whispered. "I was waiting for justice," she replied calmly. "Now I have it." Outside, the bells began to ring, not for surrender, but for the end of a queen and the beginning of a king. The bells tolled long into the night, their hollow sound echoing across the broken remains of King's Landing. From the slums of Flea Bottom to the shattered towers of the Red Keep, people gathered in silence, waiting to see who would emerge. The Mad Queen was dead. The Iron Throne still stood, but no one knew who would claim it. Jon Snow stood at the top of the throne room steps, staring down at the lifeless body of Cersei Lannister. Blood still pooled at the foot of the throne, glistening in the torchlight. Daenerys hadn't moved from her place either. Her hand hovered near the chair, so close, but now uncertain. Arya remained in the shadows, ever watchful. "You killed her," Daenerys said at last, her voice cold and unreadable. "She made her choice," Jon replied. He quietly but without regret. "She sat here for years," Dany murmured, eyes still locked on the throne, ruled in blood. "And now she's gone like the rest." She turned to Jon, something dangerous behind her expression. "And what now, Jon Snow? You sit the throne in her place." Jon didn't answer. Not yet. The room filled with footsteps as Ser Davos and Sansa entered behind him. Flanked by northern guards and a few battered soldiers from the Vale, Tyrion came in last, silent, watching everything with weary eyes. Daenerys stepped back. "You all came to see the new king." "No," Sansa said sharply. "We came to make sure the war is over." Jon turned to them, exhaustion in every line of his face. "I didn't want this, any of it." His face. "I didn't want this, any of it." "You didn't," Tyrion agreed. "And that's why it has to be you," Daenerys laughed bitterly. "A bastard raised in the north. A man who would rather swing a sword than sit in a council room." and yet every man and woman in the realm would follow him before you. Sansa shot back. Tension snapped in the air like a drawn bow. Daenerys took a step forward. I crossed oceans to free people. I walked through fire. I lost everything, and now you'd give it to him? Because he's quiet and brooding and has a wolf at his side? Tyrion stepped forward, careful. You said you wanted to break the wheel. Jon is the brake, he is the wheel, she hissed. The same old thing, honor, loyalty, obedience, no vision, no fire. And yet, Arya said, her voice low and cutting, he never burned a child alive. That silenced the room. Daenerys' eyes flicked to Arya, then back to Jon. She took one long breath. You're no better than me, she whispered. You just hide it better. She turned and walked from the throne room alone. No one followed, not even Grey Worm. The next day a council was called in the Great Hall, what was left of it. The lords and ladies who remained gathered in the ruins of King's Landing. Gendry, now legitimized, represented Storm's End. Brienne stood for Tarth. Samwell Tarly came as both a Maester and a lord. Even Yara Greyjoy had arrived, bruised but unbowed. Tyrion stood in the center. We have no queen. We have no king. But we have a choice. All eyes turned to Jon. He remained standing at the back. I never wanted a crown, he said. I still don't. But I won't let this realm fall again. Not to fire. Not to fear. If you want me to lead, I will. But only to rebuild, not to rule. That's exactly why you must rule, said Sam. One by one, the heads of houses began to nod. Even Yara, after a pause, gave a sharp, grudging nod. The North saved the world. Maybe it should guide it too. Daenerys did not attend the council. She had flown away on Drogon that morning, not speaking to anyone. By evening, the banners of House Stark were raised, not just in the north, but over King's Landing. Not as conquerors, as restorers. The Iron Throne, blackened and bent from centuries of blood, was melted down by Drogon before Daenerys left. Only its twisted remnants remained, now displayed not as a symbol of power, but as a warning. Jon refused to build a new one. Instead, he ruled from a wooden chair in a rebuilt hall, surrounded by a council of equals. The kingdoms were no longer bound by one iron will, but by promises, mutual protection, shared rule. Jon had become the thing he never asked to be, a king without a crown. And in the north, Sansa ruled as queen, strong and proud. Arya sailed west to chart the unknown. Bran remained at the Godswood in Winterfell, far from power. As for Daenerys, no one ever saw her again. Some said she died in the shadow of old Valyria. Others whispered she found a land untouched by war, where Fireblood still ruled, but Jon never spoke of her. Again, he ruled not as a Targaryen, not even as a Stark. He ruled as Jon Snow, the man who ended the Game of Thrones. The early days of Jon Snow's reign were quiet but not peaceful. The war was over, yes. The streets of King's Landing no longer echoed with screams, and smoke no longer poured from the Red Keep. But beneath the calm surface, the realm remained broken. Hunger still clawed at the bellies of peasants. Burned villages begged for aid. Loyalists to Cersei whispered in alleyways, and Daenerys' former followers, the Unsullied, the Dothraki, the freed folk, now wandered without purpose. Jon held court in the repaired halls of the Red Keep, though it no longer felt like a seat of power. He sat not on a throne, but on a simple wooden chair, raised on a stone dais. Tyrion served as his hand, begrudgingly but faithfully. Sansa ruled the north with unwavering strength. Arya had already vanished westward beyond the seas, but the cracks were showing. At the morning council, Tyrion unfurled a scroll and sighed. 2 more grain convoys intercepted by bandits outside the Reach, he said. The gold cloaks are stretched thin. They can't guard every road, Jon leaned forward. What about Brienne's patrols? She's doing what she can, Davos said. But the lands south of the Trident are still lawless. If the lords are refusing to recognize the council, Tyrion glanced at Jon. They say you're not really king. Not without a crown. Not without coronation. Not official, Jon frowned. They want me to wear gold while people starve. They want something to believe in. Sansa's raven had said just days earlier. You rule with good intentions, Jon, but good intentions don't fill stomachs or hold bannermen in line. Jon had thought killing Cersei would bring peace. He thought Daenerys' exile would cool the fires of war, but he had underestimated what power meant to people. Without fear or wealth, without dragons or titles, many refused to see him as more than a placeholder. Outside the city walls, things were growing worse. Grey Worm and the Unsullied had remained longer than expected. Though silent and obedient, they carried the weight of betrayal, especially from Daenerys' disappearance. No one knew where she'd gone. Drogon had flown east, and she'd left behind no message, no will, nothing. Grey Worm now led a camp of over 1,000 Unsullied who answered to no crown. They patrolled the docks, watched the gates, and silently resisted Jon's reign with cold, expressionless stares. One evening, Jon met with him privately at the Black Cells. "I want peace between us," Jon said simply. Grey Worm didn't flinch. "She was our queen." "She was," Jon replied, "but she burned innocence. She made her choice. She freed us." Jon lowered his eyes. "And I won't take that from you. You're free now, truly, but you can't rule through fear either. Not anymore." Grey Worm said nothing for a long time, then he turned and walked away. A week later, the Unsullied were gone, sailed west, then south. No one knew where. Some said Nath. Others feared they'd return one day under another banner, but peace was fragile in more ways than one. In the Reach, Gendry Baratheon faced his own crisis. Lord still loyal to the old Lannister regime refused to recognize a blacksmith's son as a true lord, legitimized or not. Bandits plagued the roads. Gold was running thin. In the Iron Islands, Yara Greyjoy ruled with an iron hand, but whispers of rebellion stirred among the old Reavers. Some missed the days of fire and blood, some wanted revenge for Euron, and some spoke of Daenerys returning to take back what was hers. Jon began receiving letters marked with strange sigils. A red flame, a black dragon. Some were written in High Valyrian. One read simply, "The Queen lives." That night, Jon stood alone atop the walls of the Red Keep, overlooking the Blackwater. He wore no crown. He kept no guards close. The stars stretched above him, and the wind carried a salty breeze. Tyrion joined him. Silent at first. "They'll never stop looking for a new ruler," Jon said eventually. "A better one, or a worse one. Doesn't matter. They always do," Tyrion replied. "But better that they look while full and safe than starving and afraid." Jon glanced at him. "Am I doing the right thing?" Tyrion smirked faintly. "If you weren't, you wouldn't be asking." Down below, a ship departed from the harbor, a small one fast. It was bearing the seal of House Targaryen. Jon watched it vanish into the mist, a heaviness in his chest. Daenerys had once said she'd break the wheel, but maybe the wheel had only changed hands, and maybe the realm wasn't ready to let go of fire after all. The leaves turned orange as the air grew crisp with the scent of early frost. And for the first time since the fall of King's Landing, the city stood quiet under a fragile sense of order. But beneath the quiet surface, Jon Snow could feel something wrong, like the tremble before an avalanche. It began with whispers. In the inns of Old Town, sailors spoke of a woman with silver hair, spotted boarding a ship under cover of night. In Volantis, red priests stirred there, followers with talk of a queen reborn in flame. Refugees from the east carried tales of Drogon's shadow stretching across the deserts of Essos, and from Dorne came word that House Martell, what was left of it, had begun gathering banners again, quietly, carefully. Jon sat with Tyrion in the war room, maps laid out before them like old scars. He tapped the handle of Longclaw against the table, his brow furrowed. "She's alive," Jon muttered. "Somewhere," Tyrion gave a long sigh. "The world never mourns a Targaryen for long. They vanish, they return. That's the trouble with fire. No one ever knows when it's truly gone out." Jon leaned forward. "If she's building support in Essos, we'll hear more soon. If she brings Drogon back?" Tyrion looked up, grim. "Then this won't be your kingdom for much longer." Jon was silent. In the north, ravens arrived more frequently, their wings heavy with news. Lancer kept Winterfell safe, but unrest brewed even there. Some northern lords believed Jon had become too soft, too southern. They questioned his authority now that he sat in a castle where Starks were once burned. The North remembers, they warned. But it also watches. Arya had not sent word in moons. Some said she died beyond the sunset sea. Others claimed she never existed at all. Just a shadow that moved in and out of stories. Jon knew better. If Arya was dead, he'd feel it. Still, her silence gnawed at him, and in the south things unraveled faster. Gendry Baratheon was nearly killed when his convoy was ambushed near Ashford. His sigil, Baratheon's crowned stag, was smeared in blood and nailed to a tree with a dagger bearing the dragon of House Targaryen. Yara sent Jon a raven from the Iron Islands. "Your queen lives. Choose your loyalty now before the fire returns." Jon crumpled the message in his fist. One evening, Jon stood on the ramparts of the Red Keep. Rain fell in thin streaks, hissing on the stone. His cloak hung heavy, soaked to the bone, but he didn't move. He watched the dark sea and waited. He wasn't sure for what. Tyrion approached quietly, holding 2 cups of warm wine. He handed one over and leaned beside him. "I spent most of my life trying to survive," Tyrion said. "Now I wonder what I'm surviving for." Jon drank. "The realm," Tyrion smiled bitterly. "Is that what this still is? A realm?" Jon looked at him, eyes tired. "If she comes back, if Daenerys brings Drogon, brings fire and armies, what would you do?" Tyrion didn't answer right away. He stared into the black water below. I think I'd run," Jon chuckled once. "Coward." No, Tyrion said, raising a finger. "A smart coward. You should try it sometime." But there was no humor in either of their eyes. 3 nights later it happened. A merchant ship docked just before dawn, its sails tattered, hull scorched. The crew was nearly mad with fear. The captain, trembling and wide-eyed, insisted he had seen the shadow of a dragon near the coast of Lys. "He's coming back," the captain gasped. "The black one? The winged death. I saw fire in the sky." Jon gathered the council immediately. Sansa appeared through a raven-sent portal of sorcery in the castle's glass room, an invention left behind by Qyburn, twisted but functional. Her face was pale. "If Daenerys returns," she said, "we can't meet her in open war. We'll lose. Drogon alone could burn every city between here and the Eyrie." Tyrion nodded. "The people will turn to her. She has the name, the power, the fear." "She's not the same woman anymore," Jon said softly. "Not after everything. She's not coming to rule. She's coming to take. And she'll take everything," Davos added grimly. "Even your head." The silence that followed said what no one else wanted to. Jon would have to kill her again, this time for good, if she let him close. That night, Jon walked alone to the ruined sept of Baelor. It had never been rebuilt after the wildfire blast. The stones still smelled of smoke even years later. He knelt among the rubble and whispered to no one in particular. "I never wanted this. I never asked for the crown. I never asked to love her. But if she returns to destroy what we saved..." He looked up at the stars breaking through the clouds. "I'll stop her, even if it kills me." Behind him in the shadows, a cloaked figure watched and disappeared into the night. Far across the sea, somewhere in the burning sands of Essos, Daenerys Targaryen stood barefoot before a roaring fire, her silver hair unbound, her skin unmarred by age or pain. Drogon circled above like a storm. She held a crown in her hand, not gold, not iron, obsidian. "The world took everything from me," she whispered into the flames. "Now I will take it back." The night Daenerys returned to Westeros, the stars vanished from the sky. No warning, no ravens, no armies marching through the countryside. Just fire, sudden and brutal. At dawn, Blackmont in Dawn was reduced to cinders. By midday, Tumbleton burned, and by nightfall, the ruins of Old Town were glowing with green fire that hadn't been seen since Aerys. Targaryen Jon Snow stood atop the ramparts of the Red Keep and watched the dark sky turn orange in the distance. "She's not hiding anymore," he said. Tyrion joined him, pale and shaken. "We thought she'd come back quietly, that she'd gather allies, make demands. But she doesn't want to rule. She wants vengeance. The council chambers were chaos. The people will revolt if she gets near King's Landing." shouted Gendry, his hand slamming the table. "She'll burn the cities like she did Slaver's Bay," Davos added. "Only this time we won't have dragons of our own." Sansa's voice cut through them all. She doesn't want peace. She wants to erase everything that reminds her she lost. That includes you, Jon. He stood silently at the head of the table, listening. "She was my queen," he said finally. "I failed her once. I won't let her destroy the realm just because I couldn't stop her again." Brienne stood. "Then let me ride with you. You'll need protection." He shook his head. "No, this ends between us. No armies. No banners." Tyrion looked up slowly. "You think you can reason with her?" Jon didn't answer, because deep down he didn't believe he could. That night he prepared alone. He dressed not in a king's armor, but in the black leathers he wore as a Night's Watch brother. Ghost followed him through the halls, silent, scarred, loyal. Longclaw hung heavy on his back. He left a letter with Tyrion. "If I do not return, make peace without me." The realm doesn't need a hero. It needs a future. Then he rode south alone. Through the Reach, scorched fields still smoked. Villages once green with life were now ash pits. Children hid in cellars. Animals roamed without masters. The sky itself felt different, hotter, angrier. It was as if the land remembered fire. He reached the ruins of the Sept of Baelor again before sunset on the third day. But this time he wasn't alone. Drogon landed first, his wings blotting out the sun. His roar cracked the stone, and his eyes burned red with fury. Jon dismounted slowly, arms raised, not in fear but in recognition. Then she stepped forward. Daenerys, clad in black and red, hair loose and silver against her shoulders. A crown of obsidian rested on her brow. Her eyes met Jon's, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "You came," she said softly. "I had to. You brought no army?" "I didn't come to fight you." She tilted her head, curious. "Then why?" Jon stepped closer. "Because the woman I loved is still somewhere inside you. And if she's gone, then I need to bury her myself." She didn't flinch. "You betrayed me," she said, voice hardening. "You chose them over me. You killed me. I chose the realm that mocked me, feared me, burned me. And now it begs me to save it?" She took a step forward, eyes blazing. "I am the fire that cleanses it, Jon. I am the last dragon." "No," Jon whispered. "You're just another tyrant who lost her way." Drogon roared again, the earth shaking under Jon's boots. But Daenerys raised a hand, calming the beast. She walked to Jon now, slow and deliberate, and looked him in the eye. "Do it then," she whispered. "If you came to kill me again, do it." Jon stared at her. The girl he had loved in the north by firelight. The queen he had once called his. The woman he had buried with his own hands. He reached for Longclaw and then dropped it. "I'm done killing the people I love." Daenerys looked stunned. "You can burn the cities," he said. "You can rule with fear, but there's nothing left to take from me. I gave it all up the day I put that blade in your heart." She stared at him. Her hand trembled. "You would die for them?" "I already did." Tears welled in her eyes, but not sorrow, rage. "You're weak," she whispered. "That's why they love you." And then she turned toward Drogon. The dragon snarled, flames gathering in his throat. Jon stepped forward, arms out. "If you're going to end this, end it." Drogon reared back, wings wide, mouth glowing with fire. Daenerys raised her hand, but the fire never came. Instead, Drogon turned slowly and roared into the sky. A long, painful, grieving scream. He looked at Jon and lowered his head. Daenerys's mouth opened, shocked. "No," she whispered. "No, he's mine." But Drogon stepped back from her, as if even the beast had made his choice. Jon looked at her one last time. "It's over." She fell to her knees, trembling. Last time. "It's over." She fell to her knees, trembling. Jon returned to King's Landing days later, his cloak scorched, his face blackened by ash. He didn't speak of what passed in the ruins, only that Daenerys was gone, flown east again, perhaps forever. This time, not as a conqueror, as a ghost. The realm entered a new age. There were no more kings, no more thrones. Jon dismantled the monarchy and built a council of lords and commoners alike. Power passed not through blood, but by choice. He ruled a few more years quietly. Then one day, he left the capital behind and rode north, past Winterfell, past the Wall, to the lands where names didn't matter, and the past could sleep. He was never seen again, but the stories remained, of the wolf who ended fire, of the king who never wore a crown, and of the dragon who turned its back on war.